Hello, Serie A fan. A challenging week for Italy's Champions League contenders. Lazio, decimated by coronavirus. Juve, decimated by Barcelona. Atalanta climb a mountain against Ajax, but Conte's happy with a 0-0 draw for Inter. We discuss all the European action and take a look forward to the weekend in this episode of Scudetto. Hello and welcome to Scudetto. It's a Thursday night and I'm here in the virtual studio with two good friends and three good beers. We're going to be chatting about how the Italians got on in Europe this week, as well as previewing the pick of the weekend fixtures, plus honourable, dishonourable mentions as usual. But first of all, Kenny, how are you? You looking forward to the weekend?
Yeah, I am. I'm good, thanks. I'm good. Some good fixtures coming up, so looking forward to discussing them as well.
Good stuff. And you've got yourself a nice graphical Scottish beer.
I have. I've come back to the Northern Hemisphere this time. I've got a Tempest Brewing Company, Dios Mio. It is a 6%er, so I'm veering into Boaz territory here. But the main reason I bought it is because it's a jalapeno and lime IPA, which sounded weird to me. But I'm going to crack it open now and give it a go, and I'll let you know what I think.
Be interested to know if it's spicy.
It sounds like my bag.
I can't taste the jalapeno.
Boo, shame.
It's nice. It tastes like a nice IPA. I can't even really taste the lime. Oh, I can taste the lime now a bit.
False advertising.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's quite nice.
Good. All right, Baz, we're intrigued. Baz has just come on camera holding a bag of ice, and he's got a surprise beer for us. So.
A friend of mine bought me this beer. I'm not sure why he thought it would be a good fit for me. I'm slightly offended, but it could be interesting. It's called Canna Brew, and apparently it's got THC in it. So
oh, wow.
It's fresh, craft, unfiltered, a lot of energy. So I'm going to be full on for this episode, and I'm going to taste it now as well.
I can taste the jalapeno now, by the way. Just an update on that front.
What have you got, Oscar?
I've got a good one, actually. It's brewed in Finland, but it's brewed by a Swedish-speaking Finnish company called Malmgard. And it's something called Kuningatar Sour. And it's from Kuningatar Jam, which is the Queen's Jam. And it's like a mix of blueberry and raspberry.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's kind of fruity, but quite enjoying it. It's a solid 5%, so what Baz would call a weak one.
I just had a swig of this Canna Brew, and I think it falls into the novelty category for sure. Tastes very weird.
Okay. Anyway, let's crack on with the football. So first, I think we need to start with Juventus. Obviously, had a very disappointing result against a kind of second-string Barcelona team. Boaz Morata had the ball in the net 3 times, each time ruled out for offside. Do you think Ronaldo would have made the difference in this one?
First of all, a player of Ronaldo's quality always makes the difference. Having said that, a team with Juventus's pedigree shouldn't need to rely on their one star to win a home game in Europe. And overall, I think Juventus's tactical approach was very disappointing. And we were discussing before we were recording that of all years, this was the year where Barca were there for the taking. They're kind of they've just lost the derby. They're kind of a club in transition with a lot of craziness going off the field, and yet Juventus managed to out-crazy them in this game. I understand that there's a serious caveat with Ronaldo, as you mentioned, missing, and also De Ligt and Chiellini. But at the same time, the way Pirlo put out the team, I felt was maybe slightly too offensive. There's no shame in putting a well-balanced team out if this is the personnel you have. And the way Juve were out on the field just seemed like, Barca cut them up like butter. And to be honest, I didn't see Kulusevski much. I didn't see Chiesa much at all. And these, I understand, they're young players. They're probably the future of Juventus. But when there's a big game at home on the horizon, you expect someone to put in captain's performance, to show some balls, so to speak. And for me, at least, Juventus seriously lacked balls yesterday.
Fair enough. Do you think Pirlo's going to learn from this? I guess it's his first kind of big test in Europe. And it could have been worse, like 2-0 against a Barcelona team. You mentioned their issues, but obviously with the personnel missing at Juve, there are issues there as well.
I think, first of all, it has to be said that the penalty that was given at the end against Bernardeschi was outside of the area. So, yes, the score of 2-0 with a kind of a strange penalty. And by the way, how strange is it when Juve get these penalties, these decisions given against them? Having said that, Barcelona had several chances. And I think Juventus didn't take a single shot on target throughout the whole game. Which again, I mean, I've said this 3 times, but they were playing at home. This is their territory, and kind of Barcelona came in and pissed in all 4 of the corners.
I actually thought that the foul had continued into the box. I know it started outside, but I just wanted to mention very quickly that the commentators, when on the channel I was watching it on here in the UK, the commentators, when they were watching the replay, you could hear them trying not to giggle in the background. That's just how pathetic Bernardeschi's challenge was. So you don't hear that very often.
Yeah, and just kind of more broadly on Pirlo, we've sung his praises on this podcast many times, but he's got a big task ahead of him, hasn't he? What do we think is kind of minimum acceptable achievement in Europe this year?
I think paradoxically, even though Sarri was sacked despite winning the title, I think Pirlo will probably be given a little bit more time. We did say this about Sarri as well, to be fair, but I think Pirlo has kind of this Juve DNA that they've made up. He fits their whole general scheme, the way the team is set up, and he's less of a tactician, more of a man management kind of guy. Having said that, if he continues being so dogmatic and sticking to his one way of playing football, he's going to run into trouble because, of course, we're talking about Juve Barça at the moment, but there was also a draw at home versus Verona last weekend, where again they failed to shine, and again he's saying there's a lot of new players in the team, there's a lot of youngsters, but the team that played yesterday, most of them have got 50 plus games in the Champions League under their belt.
Just for my tuppence worth, I have no doubt that Pirlo will become a great manager. Whether or not he's given the time to do that at Juve, I don't know. But I think he's got to have a little bit longer before people start asking whether he continues there or not for this season.
And if we want to look at the glass half full for a little bit, I think Morata, despite having those 3 goals disallowed, I think he's getting into the right positions. And, this is right now he's 5 centimeters or 10 centimeters offside, but tomorrow he might be 5 centimeters onside, and he's making the right runs. He seems to be the right striker for this tactic. So at least on that front, Juve have got it right so far.
Absolutely. You won't be able to call him Alvaro Morata anymore if he managed to check his runs a little bit better. But anyway, sort of regardless of, and I think you're right, Kenny, I'm not suggesting that we should be calling for his head. He's obviously brilliant for the brand and really has the club DNA.
Brilliant for the brand.
Brilliant for the Juventus brand, the new logo and the lovely that we discussed last week. But regardless of how they do get on in Europe, surely they need to improve their Serie A form, right? They're facing Spezia on Sunday, whose form has improved a little bit after a poor start. Do you think there's a chance they might struggle here, Boaz?
I think Spezia have surprised us a little bit with their 5 points in 5 games so far. After the first 2 games, we thought they were going to get thrashed, or at least I thought they were going to struggle to even get 15 points. But manager Vinny Italian has been doing the right job. And ultimately they've got some great results, including their 2-2 draw with Parma, which they seriously risked winning. And in their previous game, they also drew with a great chance towards the end. Again, if we were betting men, I would probably not bet on Spezia because they're playing Juventus after all. But we've seen stranger things happen, and especially this season. And
they also have COVID cases of their own as well. I think Ehrlich is the latest to be self-isolating, but they go into this off the back of a 2-0 win in Coppa Italia albeit against Cittadella, but it just helps the momentum keep going.
Yeah, of course, no advantage for the teams that weren't playing in Europe, no rest this week because most of them had midweek games in the Coppa Italia. Anyway, moving on to one of the other teams that was playing in the Champions League this week, Inter, who faced Shakhtar in Kiev on Tuesday night. They were hoping to put the Mönchengladbach game behind them, but turned out to be another frustrating night ending in a 0-0 draw. Conte said that Inter were unlucky not to win this game. Do you think that's fair, Kenny?
I think they were, yeah, it's fair that there was a bit of bad luck, but it was a combination really of bad luck, wonderful young goalkeeper, 19-year-old Trubin, and wastefulness really. Lukaku, Vidal, and mostly Lautaro missing wonderful opportunities. But yeah, on the bad luck, what an effort from Barella, what technique involved in that shot that rattled the bar. So, I mean, yeah, they were a bit unlucky, but also, they can blame themselves as well.
Okay, yeah. And let's talk about the supposed penalty not given on Lukaku. Were they unlucky there? Would have made the difference in the match. Was it the correct decision?
I don't think it was the correct decision. I think it probably was. I think it probably was a penalty. Especially when you see the penalty that was given against Patrick in the Lazio game. It was almost an identical tackle. Basically, he had his arms around him, didn't he, Bondar? But yeah, I mean, we've also seen them not given, so I wasn't shocked to see it not given, but it probably was a penalty.
Anyway, next up for Inter is Parma at the San Siro. Challenging and pretty mixed season for Parma so far, but they go into this after a 3-1 win over Pescara in the Coppa Italia midweek. We mentioned that those games have been going on. Can they use that as a catalyst to push on, perhaps starting on Saturday?
Yeah, I guess to a certain extent. Again, as I said before, this is a team in a lower division, albeit Serie B rather than Serie C, but they do also have that last gasp draw that they got against Spezia that Boaz mentioned there. So that will hopefully give them a little bit of encouragement. It has been a mixed season for them so far. They've beaten Verona, but then they've lost to Udinese. They've also had, as we've discussed on previous pods, they've had their own COVID situation to contend with as well. And as Liverani said in the week, they've also got a lot of new players to bed in. And as he mentioned, that a lot of them still don't understand Italian. So big challenges. I don't know. There's this story that Boaz mentioned to us that Lukaku's now out injured until next week. So perhaps that's a bit of a glimmer of hope for them. But yeah, I still expect Inter to come away with all 3 points from this.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a disaster if they don't, really, isn't it? I mean, we're not going to see happy Conte if they fail to get all 3 points, let's put it that way.
No, absolutely not. It does have to be pointed out, though. I mean, when I first saw this fixture, I was like, well, that's one they have to win. They can't afford to, because, we've all spoken about the points that Inter have dropped, but they're only, I think, 3 points off top of the table now, and we're only 5 games into the season. So I'm not sure if I'd classify it as a must-win, but certainly, these are the games that they have to be winning if they want to seriously put up a challenge.
Sure. Okay, that's probably enough on Inter. Let's move on to Lazio, who are also playing in the Champions League this week. Bit of a disappointing result for them. They let a lead slip in a 1-1 draw with Club Brugge. On the other hand, they're still top of the group after 2 games. So what do we think? Could they do some damage in this competition, Baz?
Lazio traveled to Belgium with a serious caveat where they had 12 senior squad players missing for COVID reasons. With that in mind, the away draw is a very good result. Having said that, at least I felt from what I saw that Lazio maybe could have dared a little bit more. They went ahead with a really neat goal from Joaquin Correa.
That was lovely, wasn't it?
It was a really nice passage, and the XG for that goal was very, very low. So it didn't seem that hard for me, but according to the stats, it's not an easy goal to score. But then they were caught by a stupid penalty given away by Patrick that Kenny mentioned earlier. To make matters worse, Patrick then went off with nausea at the beginning of the second half. And the squad, the Lazio gave debuts to some youngsters as a result. So overall, not bad at all. And considering they beat Dortmund in the first game of the group, this puts them in a good position. But I would have hoped for them to maybe get another goal.
Yeah, and we have said a couple of weeks ago, Lazio never really got going again after lockdown. So definitely their defensive consistency seems to have disappeared a bit. Obviously, with the caveat that you mentioned, they've had players out. But on the other hand, they do seem to have found a bit more attacking fluency that was maybe absent before. How much can we just put this down to simply Immobile's form, or has there been a bit of a tactical shift?
So ironically, Immobile was missing in Bruges this week. Again, I think he's got COVID. But in any case, until this weekend, this midweek round of fixtures, it felt to us like Lazio were coming back. There was a couple of really good performances, and the free-flowing football was working well. And again, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but the win against Dortmund particularly was Inzaghi outfoxing his counterpart and really like drawing the Dortmund defense out before hitting them on the break. So lovely stuff altogether. But obviously, we saw it at the end of last year where without a couple of key personnel, the squad struggled. And again, without all these players for this game, it makes sense that the game was a bit stop-start.
I think particularly worrying for Lazio because we all said at the start of the season they didn't really seem to have done much in the transfer market, especially for a team playing in the Champions League, and to have this hanging over them now, they could be expected to be playing back-to-back games for the next couple of weeks with a lot of their star players. I mean, Immobile, Luis Alberto wasn't there either for this one, so. I think I would be worried if I was a Lazio fan.
Yeah, sure. Although I don't think they've got too much to worry about this weekend. They face Torino, who still haven't won a game this season. Kenny said at the start of the season they could well go down. I mean, he was right, wasn't he, Boaz?
I hope they don't, because I have a soft spot for Belotti, but the way it's gone thus far, it's not been great. They've managed to score a lot of goals. They've been in the game for most of the games they've played. But when it comes down to results, the results haven't been great, as we mentioned. Gianpaolo, time is clearly running out for Gianpaolo. And once more, like his experience at Milan, this is a manager who plays a certain type of football and is very, very fixed to his ideology. And the players that Torino brought in, as well as the players that were already there, probably aren't an amazing fit for this kind of football.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, actually, because he was sacked after 7 games at Milan, wasn't he? And he actually won 3 of them. He's currently 5 games. Was it 4 losses and a draw? Things need to improve, certainly. All right, let's move on to Atalanta. Ladeo were, of course, the other Serie A side, the final Serie A side in Champions League action as they hosted Ajax. A bit of a special night for Atalanta in many ways, this one, wasn't it, Kenny?
Yeah, it really was. It was the first ever Champions League game to be played in Bergamo. They obviously played in the Champions League last season, but they were playing at San Siro. They completely raced against time to get the stadium ready. Last year, they thought that they might get the go-ahead, and they were denied. This year, they've made huge changes to the ground. So the first Champions League game there, and it was really poetic for them to be facing Ajax, which is in many ways kind of has provided a blueprint for what Atalanta do, not just in terms of the scouting network and the excellent youth system, the emphasis on youth, but also in Gasperini's play. I think he's even said himself that the Ajax's total football you can pronounce this better than I can, Oscar, but total football in English of the 60s and 70s was a big inspiration in Gasperini's coaching. So yeah, just really nice. They couldn't have asked for a better opponent to come up against. They probably would have wanted 3 points before the game, but the way things panned out, they're probably quite happy to go away with a point.
If you had a time machine and you went back to, say, the 70s and you were to tell someone, hey, Ajax are going to go toe-to-toe with Atalanta in Bergamo, they'd look at you like you were mad.
Yeah, so it was nice to see the interview. I was just going to mention with Hatabo, I think you flagged to us, Kenny.
I did.
Certainly seemed somewhat starstruck. Anyway, on paper, it looked like a bit of a heroic comeback for Atalanta, become a bit of a feature of the way they play, and not just this season, conceding early, leaving themselves a bit of a challenge to pull it back. They didn't manage it at the weekend, but back on brand on Tuesday, Kenny.
Yeah, I actually thought Atalanta actually started this game quite well. It was a great game for the first half an hour. It was end-to-end stuff. But yeah, then Ajax obviously got the penalty for the high foot from Gozens. And after that, they turned the screw, really. The Atalanta's it was basically backs to the wall stuff from then on, pretty much until half-time. And Ajax obviously got their second with that. At first, I thought it was a horrible spill from Sportiello, but turned out that actually the ball had kind of ricocheted before it got to him. But yeah, like you said, back on brand. Second half, Zapata in particular had a great game, and it was very much a different story. They clicked, they pressed much better. And Sportiello even redeemed himself with two great saves.
Yeah, and how good was Zapata actually? In the media, it was painted as a bit of a kind of one-man rescue job. Was that fair?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was a one-man rescue job, but he was absolutely excellent. Just his strength, his speed, his intelligence, and what a finish! What a finish for the first goal! Just textbook header into the ground. But that second one where it was a counter-attack and he seemed to take an age, and you just thought it was one of those ones where he's had too much time to think about it, he's going to miss it, but instead he just absolutely rocketed it in from the edge of the goalkeeper's area. Yeah, he was great.
And they face Crotone this weekend, down the bottom with Torino. Obviously hesitate to call any game easy, but a bit of a kind one for Atalanta.
Yeah, maybe. Although Crotone did pick up a point against Juve, it happened to be the only point they've picked up to date. They've had big defeats elsewhere.
Everybody picks up points against Juve right now.
Fair point. But yeah, they've Crotone had big defeats to Cagliari, Sassuolo, and Genoa. And interesting point on this one, I would say, is that surprisingly to me, the two worst defenses in Serie A statistically this season, with 12 conceded and 15 conceded. But unfortunately for Crotone, they're up against the second best attack, with Atalanta scored 15. So yeah, you'd like to think that this isn't going to be another slip up from them in the league.
That's kind of all we've got time for in this part. We're going to come back and talk about all the Europa League teams and the Genova derby in the second part. Just before we wrap up, a few honourable and dishonourable mentions. Kenny, you're up first for Immobile.
Yeah, so this was because I forgot to mention him in our mini episode on Monday. It was actually Immobile became the Lazio's second top scorer of all time and the highest goal scorer of the post-war period at the weekend. And he managed to overtake Beppe Signori, who was at Lazio for 5 years and was seen as a goal machine. I think Boaz mentioned that on a previous episode, but it took Signori 5 years to get to that total, and Immobile has done it in just over 4. So yeah, honourable mention to him.
We should stop criticising him for not scoring enough for Italy, maybe.
Possibly.
Boaz, you wanted to mention Moise Kean.
Yeah, we spoke about Moise Kean at the beginning of the season, and we said that this move to PSG was kind of a last chance saloon for him, and that especially under Ancelotti, we expected him to do better at Everton, and he's doing well for PSG, which is great news. He scored 2 in the midweek in the Champions League against the Turkish champions, FC Erdogan, and he also scored in the midweek the previous weekend. So it's going well for him, and let's hope that he continues playing and that he plays above Icardi, who also we deserve to give dishonorable mention. We forgot about this altogether. But following the derby, Vandanara, Icardi's wife, infamous wife, tweeted that without her love, Inter never win the derby, and congratulations to all my Milan friends. So wow, well done to her.
Indeed. And on the topic of dishonourable mentions, my favourite kind of dishonourable mention, Kenny, tell us what Ronaldo's been up to.
Oh, this isn't so much a dishonourable mention for Ronaldo. It's more an honourable mention for who is reportedly a leading virologist, Roberto Burioni. So Ronaldo, after his positive COVID test prior to the Barça game, was on Instagram and put something down saying PCR, which is, the COVID testing kits. PCR is bullshit. To which Burioni replied, I welcome into the growing network of virologists our colleague Cristiano Ronaldo. He'll be very useful in the upcoming game against the inoculators, which I thought was a very good put down. But then even better than that was that this got picked up by the media, so much so that they then went on and asked Pavel Nedved about it, who just said, all I'm going to say really is that Ronaldo is very frustrated at the moment that he's not able to get in there and do his thing. And I think in Ronaldo's defense, that's fair enough, really.
Lovely stuff. Or maybe you can join Zlatan in his fight against COVID. Anyway, that's all we've got time for in part one. We'll be right back.
Hello, Serie A fan. Make Scudetto a part of your weekly football fix. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favourite listening platform, and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at ScudettoPod. We'd love to have you on the squad.
Hello and welcome back. In this part, we will discuss the rest of the teams that are playing in Europe and look ahead to the Derby of the Lantern. But first, a beers update. Kenny, how's it going down? You promised us a rating by the second half.
It's good. I've got like a constant spice. I feel like this is karma for saying that I couldn't taste the jalapeno. But yeah, it's quite strong. Might affect my performance in the second half.
Maybe we'll have to...
Might make it better.
Let you give the rating in the morning, perhaps. How about you, Boaz? Are you feeling energetic?
Yeah, I'm buzzing right now. I think this is kind of false advertisement, but I wouldn't know what cannabis is supposed to do to you, so maybe this is the effect I'm expecting.
Good stuff. This is very nice. It's quite sour though. I think I'd struggle to drink more than a couple. All right, so first up, Milan. Milan have just won 3-0 in their Europa League fixture. But first we do have to talk about the game on Monday, Boaz. We watched this one together, and I think both agreed that Milan probably deserved the points, but the game was somewhat derailed by some strange penalty decisions, wasn't it?
I think it was worth moving the pod for that game. Fireworks. I'd said before that I wanted lots of goals, and maybe I should be careful what I wish for. 3-3, fantastic advert for Serie A, except it wasn't, because the referee decided to put the spotlight on himself and kind of took the flow out of the game even before the penalty decisions were made. And then there's two penalty decisions that are kind of farcical, if you ask me, and actually if you ask anybody. The first one he's completely made up. Benacer, who's really a fantastic midfielder, and with all the spotlight being on Tonali right now, Benacer is showing that he's the guy that Milan can rely on. But in any case, he gets to the ball first, and even Pedro thinks he's fouled Benacer. But for some reason, the ref saw a foul, and even worse, the VAR backed him up on this. And a few minutes later, there's another fictional penalty where, Hakan goes down for the easiest of touches, and the ref is obviously compensating. But again, where's the VAR? The problem in modern football for me is not VAR per se, but it's the way VAR is being interpreted. You feel that for these decisions, the VAR should be called up.
Yeah, I was watching the game with you, obviously willing Roma to get back into it, but it's just an absolutely farcical decision, as you say. I was just thinking, not like this. It doesn't feel satisfying, and you're absolutely right. The ref just completely bowled it on the second one, didn't he? Just trying to make up for the earlier mistake.
And as soon as that first penalty was given, the Milan players, rightfully in my mind, kind of lost their heads. They were kind of agitated, and then a few minutes later, the Roman players were agitated, and that was it. The game was kind of a stop-start, a lot of fouls, a lot of needless late tackles, and for what is a game that ended 3-3, we're here talking about refereeing decisions and bad vibes.
Yeah, that said, I mean, Milan retain their unbeaten run, and it's a good point for Roma. So no one, I mean, before the game, nobody would have been too unhappy with a draw, I don't think.
I tend to agree, and there's also some caveats. We have to mention keeper Tatarusanu's debut for Milan. Unfortunately for him, he was pretty rubbish. The first goal, he flapped at cross. Kind of Edin Dzeko will find that was probably one of the easiest goals he'll score this year. And I felt that the penalty decision that we spoke about earlier, also, if he doesn't spill the ball, then there's no discussion whatsoever. But instead, he spills it into a very dangerous area, and he gives the referee that decision to make. Overall, he's 6'4" as far as I can tell. So I would have expected him to be a lot better on high balls. But Chloe Beresford on Twitter shared a review of, kind of a report for him playing for Romania quite a few years ago. And it essentially was him flapping at crosses. So clearly he's got previous in this regard. But it has to be said, in his defense, if I'm going to play devil's advocate, he was notified that he was going to be playing just a few hours before the game. And it can't be easy to be the number 12. It's probably one of the hardest positions in a football team.
Yeah, and in contrast to that, Mirante, between the sticks at the other end, had an absolutely outstanding game. Probably a man of the match performance. And for a goalkeeper to get a man of the match performance in a 3-3, it's been a bit of a mad one.
At the beginning of the season, there was a bit of a hoo-ha about whether Mirante should play or Pau Lopez. And I have to admit, I was a little bit surprised myself that Mirante got the nod. I should eat my words, because he was fantastic. He saved a point blank header from Kessie. Overall, he had an amazing game, and I think if you'd swapped the two keepers around, Milan would have won 5-1.
Okay, well, Milan face Udinese this weekend. Do you think the record's in danger, Boaz?
It would just be typical to lose this incredible record against Udinese side, who have been pretty abysmal so far. I know they won in the midweek in the Coppa Italia, and De La Feo got a goal. So those are some positive signs from Udinese. But overall, I'm hoping that Milan keep this little run going a little bit longer. I actually initially thought that with the intense squad rotation going down this evening, that today might be the day where Milan kind of slip up the way Napoli did last week against Alkmaar. It was pretty smooth sailing today. Sparta weren't really at the races, probably because their league is shut down because of COVID reasons. But in either case, it was probably the easiest test that Milan have had all season, and I include the game against Shamrock Rovers in that list.
Yeah, and Roma in action tonight in the Europa League as well. They're playing CSK Sofia. In fact, I think it's just finished 0-0. I haven't had a chance to watch it because we've been recording this podcast. We mentioned already Mirante, also Dzeko, after his flirtations with Juve, seems to be back to his old self. Scored a good goal in the derby, didn't he, Bears?
Derby.
Sorry, not in the derby. In the game on Monday.
I mentioned it earlier that his header was one of the easiest goals he's scored, but perhaps the best thing to highlight from Dzeko's performance as a whole was how he was celebrating like a hooligan when the third goal went in. Clearly, he enjoyed that, and it's nice to see that his heart is still in it. We're big fans of Dzeko here, so it's a shame he had to score against my team, but overall, if someone's got to score, I'm happy for it to be him.
The derby between you and me, Buzz.
Yeah, this was the first derby since we started Scudetto, so I won't be talking to Oscar until next weekend. But actually, if I shared with our Twitter audience the texts that were going on between our personal group, where I was losing my head about the penalty decision and being really unprofessional. So, but this is me this is my professional side talking now.
Very good. Roma, anyway, face Fiorentina at the weekend. Fiorentina didn't start too well, do appear to have turned a bit of a corner, don't they, Kenny?
Well, they've won 2 games in a row. They still look very, very shaky. And yes, to point out, one of those was Serie A's Padova in Coppa Italia. Again, they were 2-0 up at halftime, conceded a goal in the second half, and did their best to let Padova back into it. They're just like they're so, I wouldn't even say inconsistent, because that tends to be from game to game. They're inconsistent within games. I really still, I say this every week, I fear for Iachini's job, but he really needs to start. They really need to start getting it together. The players don't look confident. They go in front and they seem to all of a sudden get scared. It's been a recurring theme that they've taken the lead in games. I mean, the Inter game was probably the most high profile one of those, but it's certainly not been the only time it's happened in the very few games that we've had already this season. They're also probably going to be without Ribéry in this game. He's dealing with his usual muscular injuries. As the last time I checked earlier on today, there was no word on whether he's expected to be fit, but they need someone to stand up. They've had Castrovilli stand up, but he can't do it by himself.
And any other points worth discussing on Fiorentina before we move on?
I just think I do want to say that in any other weekend, and particularly this weekend where perhaps the matchups are a little bit less spectacular, this would probably be the game of the week. However, there's another match this week that looks a lot better, at least on paper.
Should we talk about that one then? Napoli-Sassuolo is going to be the most fun game of the weekend.
Before we do that, can I just very quickly mention that Biraghi and Castrovilli have just been tied down to long-term contracts at Fiorentina. I'm done after that. You can move on.
Well, can you tell me if Napoli and Sassuolo is the most fun game of the weekend?
Yes.
I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to hope for a lot of goals, and hopefully I'll make it happen again.
Yeah, I mean, it's De Zerbi against Gattuso, isn't it? I don't think anyone, even after his time at Milan, retrospectively, he actually did a very good job when you see what happened after Gattuso left. But I don't think anyone really expected Gattuso to be the manager of a team like this. And what a job De Zerbi's doing at Sassuolo. I think every week I say what a job De Zerbi's doing, and we don't really speak about them that much. It's something that we have to do. But they had another incredible game at the weekend where they were 3-1 down in the fog on the Friday night with seemingly the game beyond them. And it was Vlad Chiriches who scored an absolute stunner of a goal from all of about 30 yards. And then
that was one of my biggest regrets from the mini episode we did on Monday, that we forgot to mention that wonder goal in the fog.
Because we couldn't really see it, I think, was the main problem.
We forgot about
it was very foggy.
But yeah, Kenny, as you say, I mean, they currently sit in third. They're unbeaten so far this season. Should we really have been hyping them as the outside title contenders rather than Atalanta?
Personally, I don't think they're going to challenge for the title, but I think possibly they could spring an Atalanta, and if a few of the teams up at the top don't pull their socks up, and I'm actually looking at Atalanta here, and I'm looking at Juventus, and even to a certain extent Inter, then Sassuolo...
And Napoli, who they're playing this weekend.
Yeah, but Napoli don't need to pull their socks up. Napoli are doing just fine, aside from the 4 points dropped to the coronavirus. But
Napoli had an unfortunate hiccup in Europe last week, but I can see now that they beat Sociedad today. The game literally ended. In any case, they've won every single game they've been involved with, except for that infamous Juventus game so far, and they've scored goals galore. So Napoli are hungry. And Sassuolo's defense is quite open, so this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, and to finish my thought, I think they could finish in they could have a shot at finishing certainly in Europe, and who knows, the way the season goes, maybe even in the Champions League spots.
Crazy talk.
Right.
It is crazy talk, but who knows? It's a crazy season.
I'll remind you of that in a couple of weeks' time. Right, let's move on to our last featured game. Sampdoria versus Genoa, reliably informed, is referred to as the Derby of the Lantern. due to the lighthouse in the port. So Burrs was worried about Samp at the start of the season. Seems that worry was maybe a bit misplaced, Kenny. They've been really impressive recently, haven't they?
Yeah, I think everyone was a bit worried. They finished last season relatively strongly. There was a period where they looked like they were going to get dragged. Well, quite a lot of the season they looked like they were going to get dragged into the relegation fight, and then Ranieri came in, steadied the ship a little bit, and they were never really in danger towards the end of the season. But at the start of the season, it looked like they were kind of back to their old ways a bit. But yeah, I saw them at the weekend against Atalanta, and I was hugely impressed. They were so organized. They defended really doggedly and really organized as an entire team, and then sprung on the break. Were really effective doing that, and very clinical in front of goal. And Quagliarella as well has now scored in 4 consecutive Serie A games. So yes, they're looking good.
Genoa, on the other hand, somewhat of opposite form. Haven't won since week 2, but there's some good news for them off the pitch, isn't there, Buzz?
Yeah, Genoa have been in the news for this season for all the wrong reasons. After starting with a fantastic 4-1 win at home, they've mostly been spoken about because of the 20 plus COVID cases that they brought to Napoli with them. Other than that, it's been a pretty disappointing season. They currently sit at 15th. They lost in the last round as well. So I think that Sampdoria are probably best placed in this derby. But then, of course, it's a derby and all the form book goes out the window, as they say. But we were doing pre-pod recordings in the last summer, and we were speaking about how Genoa were very lucky to still be in Serie A. I haven't seen anything from them to suggest that they have improved in any way. And right now, the only reason they're 15th is because there are a few poorer teams below them.
Yeah, worth mentioning on Genoa that they are actually COVID-free. So that's very encouraging. But unfortunately, Zappacosta came back after being out on the COVID list and immediately got injured in training. So he's going to miss the derby.
Terrible luck for him. But as you say, good news that the rest of the squad is back to health. I think that's all we've got time for on the featured games. We'll round up with a few honourable and dishonourable mentions. A dishonourable from me to Nicola Rizzoli, who is the head referee in Serie A. We said we weren't going to give any dishonourables to referees, but he's retired now. I think his official title is the commission or something similar to that. Despite the complaints we all had about the referees in the Milan Roma game, just thought he deserved a dishonourable for publicly criticising and suspending them. So I don't think the way to go is public humiliation of the officials when clearly there are some issues with the systems.
Fair comment.
They should be hanged, drawn, and quartered instead.
That's the variety of views that we bring you on this podcast.
But only when they make mistakes against Milan, of course.
Kenny, you wanted to give a dishonourable to Camiso.
Oh yeah, it sounds like he's been accosted by reporters and thrown his toys out of the pram. I think Boaz probably has the actual statement that he made, but basically, I've had enough of you guys. You can't get any peace. I'm moving back to the States or something like that.
I'm criticized too much when I'm here.
Yeah,
I was saying this earlier, but it seems to me that these American owners, when they come to Serie A, they kind of bring some sort of Hollywood experience to the whole thing. Whereas if you look at the owners of the big franchises in America, they're all they keep to their lane. So I'm not sure what's going on here, but Comiso is always in the headlines. And I think not if I were to be the kind of guy who's keeping a table of all the honorable and dishonorable mentions that happen in this podcast.
If you were.
Maybe if I was that guy, then I think Comiso is the first person to get 2 dishonorable mentions so far in the season. So he's ahead, at least in this.
All right, thanks, guys. That's definitely all we've got time for. Obviously, it was a bit of an experiment for us going out later in the week and with more focus on the European games. So please do let us know what you think about that. You can contact us on Twitter at ScudettoPod. Either way, we'll be back next week. Until then, enjoy the football.
Che sta decretando lo scudetto del Milan in questo preciso istante. La Juventus è campione d'Italia questa data, il 6 maggio.